person in the business track. This is not a webinar, redefining virtual events. Today's session will be moderated by Stanley Wei, who serves as Agora's Chief Strategy Officer. Before Agora, Stanley was Managing Director of Hill House Capital, focusing on investments in enterprise software and services. Stanley's also a serial entrepreneur who co-founded 36KR, BData, and Zetelic. Stanley, it's great to have you here. Also, we invite everyone in the audience to add your questions under the Questions tab to the right of the screen, and we'll try to get to all of them at the end of this session. Stanley, the floor is yours.
During the pandemic, interactions become a challenge. Events, trade shows, and conventions, etc., are heavily impacted. The virtual events become a new norm. As an infrastructure provider, we have seen players grow really fast. And meanwhile, venture money started to flow into this space in the past couple of years. Event is a huge market, so it gives us a lot of space to imagine. Would future events all become like virtual, and what is the challenge from user behavior shift, technology and product, and a go-to-market point of view? And what would be the end game like? And we're lucky to have 3 entrepreneurs and CEOs in this space. Pedro, Góes, CEO of InEvent, Saroosh, Gull, CEO of Eventcombo, Jonathan Kazarian, CEO of Accelevents. All 3 companies were founded before the pandemic, and they should have very good perspectives on how user behaviors shifted. And next, I will invite each of the CEOs to give us a brief introduction of their company. And let's start from Pedro, and next Saroosh and Jonathan. And Pedro.
Thanks, Stanley. Thank you so much. I'm Pedro, CEO at InEvent, and it's a pleasure to be here. InEvent is it's built for the new world that we're living in. We work mostly with hybrid and virtual events, working with companies deploying broadcasts and video-first events around the globe. Really nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks. Hey, Saroosh.
Thank you so much for that, Stanley. Wonderful to be on this forum with my wonderful colleagues. Eventcombo has been around for a number of years, as you mentioned, pre-pandemic. We've always been focused on the ecosystem around the event, transportation, parking, lodging, and so forth. We've adopted the same outside-the-box solutioning post-pandemic with our virtual streaming solution. And just really excited to be here with innovators and looking forward to the next hour and interacting with everybody. Very, very excited today. Thank you.
Hey, Jonathan.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Likewise, very excited about this conversation today. Accelevents is one of the leaders in the virtual event space. We tend to focus more on professional event organizers, and big aspect of that is the modular approach that we take to offering that solution, really giving event organizers the creative freedom that they need in order to create that experience that they're looking to create.
Okay. Hey, Jonathan. So I think the first question is for you. So what are the challenges you have faced after Accelevent entered this space? From a go-to-market, product feature, ambiguity, etc. point of view.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first challenge at the beginning, and I'm sure everybody will attest to this, is educating the market. It was a new landscape for everybody involved. And I mean, we're just the same. We were learning along the way and identifying every new challenge around every corner. As we think forward in terms of the opportunity and where those challenges come into play, certainly on the engagement side of things, finding opportunities to make the experience feel more natural, feel more human. And a lot of that, frankly, comes down to latency in streaming solutions. So looking for opportunities to make it feel more comfortable for speakers like us right now, reading the audience, understanding the audience. And I know that was one thing that we heard frequently from speakers who were engaging in virtual presentations for, frankly, the first time.
Okay. And so what do you think, Saroosh? What are the challenges for you?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really great question, Stanley. I mean, the list is almost endless, right? Just like every industry has been forced to reevaluate its offerings, its value to the community that they serve, we are no different. In our case, a couple of interesting things happened, Stanley, is, for the first time, I think Jonathan and Pedro will definitely agree, for the first time in 20 years, our industry, experienced a very well-needed reset. because, honestly speaking, the legacy players just stopped innovating shortly after they launched, and it became business as usual. But because of the pandemic, as I said, there was a big industry reset, and it made all of us extremely painfully uncomfortable. And you know what happens when you're uncomfortable. You're forced to innovate. You're forced to grow. And that's what we all experienced is innovation, growth, through a significant amount of discomfort and fear. But the challenges are just infinite, but they've all been experiences and teachable moments for us to evolve from, learn from, and do our best to provide value for our community. So in this context, Stanley, dare I say, the challenges and the problems we've all faced have actually resulted in, I'm looking at it at a big picture level, they've all given the industry the push that it needed. And I think our technology and our customer service and our attention to detail is now more important than ever. And at the end of the day, I think the industry is better off than they were, pre-pandemic.
Okay. Do you have anything to add, Pedro?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we are still going through this revolution that the pandemic started. One thing that we realized right in the first few days of the pandemic, like March 2020, is that everyone was doing everything. I think most providers, everyone was talking about engagement. Everyone was talking about video. Everyone was talking about the same things. And there was no differentiation at that time, right? And I think now the players are really trying to find their specific niches where they can be really successful. And that will be the long-term strategy. Because, some platforms like InEvent, for example, we are more built towards, the professional customers that's hosting multiple events per year. Not only one event, for example, or not something that they'll be successful without the implementation. They need to implement the software on the platform. So these are things on our side. And there are other players that are catering to different markets. And that what makes the industry such a good place to invest in right now, because we're going to see that there's going to be the best player for each of the requirements. And there are so many different use cases in this industry that we're going to see in the upcoming years. So I'm very, very hopeful and excited about this moment of where the industry is going towards. Yeah.
Okay, so I think this is the virtual events is as a pandemic basically to push the industries like forward, and you guys all mentioned like maybe go-to-market strategy, right? So in a sense, like there are so many verticals in the event space, the trade shows, convention, enterprise meetings, right? And there's so many user cases scenarios. When you guys found the companies, like do you guys want to build like a generic platform to serve all user cases, or you guys want to go to like verticals and become niche? And I'll give that question to Saroosh.
Sure. Thank you, Stanley. Great question. There's two sides to that coin. There's the desire or the interest that we have of, for example, let's say we want to be the platform that serves all universities, right? So we strive and we go there and we start getting university organizations on board. But then what do you do with inbound interest from, associations or nonprofits? Do you say no to them because you've decided that you're going to continue focusing on the university ecosystem? If you're looking for revenue and growth, you don't say no. So you, even though you may not want to, sometimes end up being a generic platform. I use the term universal. You end up being a universal platform that embraces all, and we tend to be that universal platform simply because even when you have a niche focus, there's no two events that are alike. There's no two organizations that are alike, even if they're in the same industry. So because there's no blueprint for an event, there's no blueprint for an organization, you tend to lean more towards being universal. Having said that, there's a lot to gain being in a niche. Obviously, you have a smaller targeted focus, and you can reach scale faster. But the challenge in that is that scale is going to be this big, as opposed to you being universal, where that scale is going to be this big. So it's a healthy debate to have. But at the end of the day, you support and satisfy the clients that are coming to you, in addition to the clients that you're chasing after. So for us, it's meant, being universal. But I think there's a lot of value in both, being niche oriented and being universal.
Is there any low-hanging fruits, like, in terms of verticals, Saroosh? Any verticals like easier to penetrate like than others?
Yeah, there's definitely a handful of low-hanging fruit. We see organizations doing networking events, for example. I mean, that's, there's so much volume in networking. So that's low-hanging fruit. We see membership-based organizations that are looking to give their members a platform to engage virtually, and obviously we serve that. So that's a couple of examples of low-hanging fruit. It's easy to call that low-hanging fruit, but you can't take it for granted, right? Because they do have options, right? You have great platforms like InEvent, like Accelevents. You have amazing competition out there. So you have to make sure that whether it's low-hanging fruit or not, you're doing 100% justice to their business needs and their strategy. But yes, Stanley, there's definitely those are a couple of examples of low-hanging fruit, right?
Yeah. Hey, Jonathan, Pedro. So, do you guys have anything to add? You're welcome to jump in.
Yeah. So, I think one thing you're giving up by completely verticalizing is that if you think about who we're serving, event organizers, these are people who are inherently incredibly creative. They're experienced creators, right? They'll walk into an open, an empty ballroom and an empty expo hall, and they turn it into an experience that you're never going to create. And working with those people across all the different verticals and learning from them and the way that they're coming up with ideas and ways to use our platform that we never would have considered, it helps us to educate other verticals on different ways to approach things. So yes, I mean, there's, as Saroosh mentioned, there's opportunities from a pure business perspective of targeting a particular vertical, but I think we're doing our customers a disservice if that's the way that we're approaching everything.
Okay.
Nice.
What do you think, Pedro?
Yeah, I was just going to add that it's interesting to see this what Saroosh add, because our vision it's the opposite. We realize, and that's what's so interesting about this market. Before InEvent, we ran a software company. We actually three founders at InEvent. We were the same ones running a company from 2012 to 2019, and we were serving every single category that we could find. And we realized that we could not do something really good by focus on everything. So in 2019 with InEvent, we actually focus on very specific categories that we work with. So there are a lot of customers that come to an event and they say, I want to host an event like this with, just for one type of thing, or like this event type. And we just say no, because we know that we are not the best fit. And, other companies can do that. Maybe Accelevents or Eventcombo can serve those events better, or others. But we only take these businesses we just onboard the customers that we are 100% sure that these are going to be the best experience on the platform. And we have this internally, like what is the best fit and everything. And we put this on our website because we want to take this space where we see that we are going to be the leaders. And by taking everything, we didn't see ourselves becoming really this de facto platform that was our vision, to build the event software. We would just want to be Windows for the event industry. That's all we want to be, the operational system for them. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's it's a trade-off to become a platform to serve everything. That's it's heavily rely on like maybe ecosystem, right? So if we want to be an integrated like solution to verticals, that's easy to gain customer in the short run. But but longer term, like the vertical by vertical to conquer each one of them, like might take more time. And so I think let's talk about some like product experience. So Pedro, so what do you think about the ideal product experience? Do you think like currently what we have right now, even Hop-in, like InEvent and Eventcombo, all those products, and so do you think this has already achieved this ideal experience for our users?
I think we're still like in the process of creating something that is truly revolutionary. Like I've seen things yet, but to be honest, I think we're still in the early stages of truly revolutionary software. What's going to be in the next 2 or 3 years? because as those companies specialize in what they're doing, they're really going to be able to create something amazing that's going to be very highly differentiated from the competition. So if you're focused on trade shows, you're going to be able to deliver something that's very, very different from a studio experience, which is different from a retreat. And by focusing on our segment right now, we see that there's a lot of things that we can do in video that's still not available in the market. Today, some of our customers, they come to us and they say, Pedro, I'm using 12 different solutions and I want to consolidate them all in one single solution. Can you help me with that? And we say yes, but there are requirements that we're still building the pipeline to truly make this like the best experience ever that we're ever going to see in the software world. So that's what we're working on.
So what do you think about AR, VR? Like, Quest 2 has released this, there's an application in, Quest, and they have like a virtual conference room. Do you think that can be a game changer?
I personally don't think so. I think it's nice for like a 30-minute experience. And if it's something new that you have never experienced and you use for 30 minutes, that's nice. But I don't see myself joining a conference for like 3-4 hours using VR. I think just the sweat around my face is going to be very complicated to manage that. I'm more like a video first person instead of VR, but I do see the value. I think VR, it's going to be very many useful cases that are going to have many successful companies building their businesses in this segment. Yeah.
Okay. What do you think? What do you think, Jonathan?
Yeah. So Saroosh kind of opened by talking about how antiquated the entire event industry and experience was pre-pandemic. The AR, VR approaches are really just replicating something that was already antiquated. If we're talking about content distribution, for example, and we're using technology to access that, why do we want to go back to the inefficient mechanism of trying to ingest that content instead of optimizing it for the platform that we're actually accessing it on?
Okay. Saroosh?
Yeah, no, there's pros and cons like everything else, right? There's pros and cons to the VR, AR, MR technology, right? We partner with a VR firm, and I've seen the challenges with it. Pedro's brought up a very valid point, and Jonathan also has brought up a very valid point, and those are extremely relevant. But both of the points are very relevant. On the other side, some pros of it are, I've seen some really cool augmentation happen with virtual reality. For example, you can't go into a stadium anymore. So you can create that same experience or a similar experience using mixed reality, where you get the energy, the sound, and the visual of being in a stadium. I've also seen 2-3 floors of a trade show being replicated, demonstrated in a virtual reality setting. Pretty impressive stuff. But then, Pedro's point comes up is that you can accept that type of visual and audio for 10, 20, 30 minutes. But is it really sustainable for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? That's the real question mark, right? And again, Jonathan said the valid point as well, is it's really kind of relegating back to things we know already. But I think we cannot say definitively whether VR, AR, MR are good or bad, just like we can't say definitively that anything is good or bad at this point, because there's 2, 3, 4 more years of innovation to experience, and it's our responsibility to keep our mind sharing active and keep exploring new solutions to satisfy our clients. But I think by no means can we say no to mixed reality. I think there's a lot to still explore there, and it's an exciting front. It's not quite there yet, though, right?
So, any product features you think, like one feature you think that can be a game changer, or like one feature you want to implement but you can't so far, or maybe on your next roadmap. Saroosh, what do you think?
I'll defer to Jonathan and Pedro. I think
Pedro, what do you think? Like a killer app, killer feature, anything that can get one ring to rule them all.
I mean, like, one thing that we are seeing right now that could help a lot, is the 5G, latency, like video battery efficiency. I still think there's a lot of ways that we can improve that because video, even at InEvent, we run our benchmarks, and video is the most app-consuming thing that you're ever going to run on your computer or mobile device. So the idea is that how can you make video not so, because all the other applications, they're less time consuming and resource intensive, and video is amazing. I mean, it's the best experience ever, and live video is even better. But, I think we're going to move a lot the technology and be able to create an experience that's going to be even like beyond what we have today, and be able to provide things that are more with like zero latency instead of 1 to 2 seconds.
Okay, that's quite functional. Is there any like user experience wise, like a more maybe immersive like experience, or like a more interactive? For example, like so in the virtual events, it allows like a lot of user interactions like the physical events cannot offer, right? And so is there any innovation about like different kinds of interactions so we can have? Now also we can like just simply talking, right? So there's some other like interaction you guys have think of right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of different opportunities there, and I guess I can't speak to any details today, but I do have to reiterate the importance of the improvement, the enhancements that are going to come in video, and the opportunity that's going to provide. One of the biggest challenges we face is that people are using all different types of hardware, and we can't optimize across every possible device and ensure the same quality of experience across every device. And that certainly poses a huge challenge. In terms of the interactivity aspects, I think there's a lot of opportunity to think about how virtual events and virtual event platforms are going to be more interactive with our lives. And thinking about some of the AWS events, like the 4K, 8K runs in Las Vegas, we can even do things like integrating with an iWatch and creating gamification competition where we're interacting with people outside of just their experience within the platform.
Okay. That's very good. That's very good insights. Saroosh, it's your turn now.
Yeah. So, it's an immersive experience. Like right now, we're in this amazing platform, and it's an immersive experience because we're all here. But what about when the event is concluded and I want to reach out to Jonathan? I can do it on LinkedIn, I can do it on email, but I think that's a missing piece right now, and video is directly tied into that, so that it's more my colleagues and the attendees are more accessible through video. It's a really expensive prospect, a really expensive concept, but I think that's an exciting topic. Is how do you make an event persist beyond the actual event being over? So I want to drop in when the event is over and just grab Garrett, right? We do that right now through WhatsApp. We do it through chat. We do it on social media. But imagine being able to grab Pedro in this same environment at any given time that I want, right? And with video, I mean, that'd be pretty cool. We saw that. I mean, Facebook put something out like that. Being able to do that in the context of events, I think is extremely powerful. It requires a significant amount of investment and technology build out. But to me, that's an exciting premise. Is just a persisting event.
That's awesome. So actually, as Agora ourselves, like we have been studying like all kinds of like interactivity so that we can do it real time. Hopefully one day like our features can help you guys. So this actually the virtual events is very disruptive to the event industry, especially to the organizers and event planners, right? How much like knowledge do you think they can transfer to the virtual events? From existing like knowledge.
How much transfers from in-person events to virtual?
Yes. So is there
yeah,
all your skills like managing offline like logistics, people flows, it's all gone, right? So all the best practices is all gone, right? So now it's like you guys lower the barrier.
I would say that one of the most important skill sets of an event organizer is a sense of urgency. And that sense of urgency is just important with virtual events.
Okay.
There is no time for delay. And I guess kind of expanding on the topic of event organizers, one of the things that I guess gets me excited every day and out of bed is the fact that we've had the opportunity to give event organizers an opportunity to continue to do what they do best and bring people together at a time where that otherwise wouldn't be possible. And not to toot my own horn or anyone else here for that matter, but the technology platforms and what they've provided over the past year and a half really have been an incredible opportunity to bring people back together.
Okay. So Saroosh, like for the traditional like events like planner or organizers, and when they transfer themselves like to virtual events, what's the biggest challenge?
Yeah, there's a list of challenges that we've observed. I'm sure Jonathan and Pedro will agree. Initially, and this behavior is now evolving to a good healthy stage. But initially, and we still see it, being prevalent, the undermining or surprise involved in putting on a virtual event. We've started saying, again, I'm sure others have as well, that doing a virtual event is like putting on a TV production, right? It's like producing a television show.
Exactly.
Right. The physical organizations, they are shocked when they have to learn that they have to have a 5-6 second delay in sequencing, that they require a producer, that they require all of this TV like infrastructure from a resourcing, from a run of show, from all those criteria. It overwhelms them, and it's like shell shock. So that's something that I forgive me. I don't know if it was Pedro or Jonathan, but one of you guys mentioned the education aspect of it, right? That is such a significant part of what we do, is educate and motivate clients to adapt and embrace this new way of doing events. So that's a number one challenge is they have an event team already, and in some cases they have a smaller event team now, and they totally underplay the digital aspect of it, where it's video, you're on camera, naturally that means you're on TV, right? That's not how they're thinking. They're thinking about it being like it used to be before the pandemic. So that's a big challenge. Educating and having them accept this fact is a big challenge. I think the other challenges are pretty common, right? You have access to talent, access to sponsors, partners, increased engagement. These are all industry-wide challenges right now, where on InEvent right now, Pedro and his team have done a great job in creating this immersive environment where you have sponsors and partners and et cetera, et cetera. But this is not easy to learn, right? Organizations require training, they require a support package to go with this, and all these things, and that we're all going to continue working on making cheaper, faster, better. But for now, this is another challenge, is just what's available. It's amazing what I'm looking at InEvent right now. It's amazing. So as an organizer, this is too much for me. So what do I need? I need support, training, and that requires time, investment, and everything like that. So basically what I'm saying, Stanley, is that the challenges are there, but the solutions are also there. And you have great innovation happening as a result of the combination of the two, right? So it's all good in my book. I think we all have to do a better job in educating. That's the one takeaway for me, right?
Mm. Okay, so before you go, so another question for you, Saroosh.
Yep.
So
yes.
Basically, so all those challenges like posed by these virtual events, right? So do you think you guys are shifting this ecosystem for the traditional like event or even the market, or do you think like you are facilitating everybody to be more digitized?
Oh, 100%, 100%. One of our criteria for clients is, do you have a producer, right? Do you have a digital producer? It's required. It's absolutely required now. To engage with a client who doesn't have a digital producer is suicide, right? I mean, it's a nightmare. So we are, and this is what I was saying moments ago, is education is such a part of it. So even during that sales prospecting, even during that onboarding, even during the dry runs and everything, you have to just over communicate the 2, 3, 4, 5 messages, because people are distracted, right? So it is it's a lot of opportunity, but it comes with a lot of baggage as well, right? And again, that's where industry education that's taking place right now needs to be done, in my opinion, a little bit more refined and consolidated. Unfortunately, agree or disagree with me, I don't think there's a consolidated industry publication or educational platform that exists that other industries may have, right? But yeah, those are my 2 cents.
Okay, so Pedro, what do you think?
I agree a lot with what Saroosh just shared.
Pedro,
the
come
idea.
on. This is not going to be fun if you agree with everything. Come on, Pedro.
That's very interesting. And I actually have one insight on this, which is, how do you over communicate in a way that's not boring? Because you have to communicate, like you have the digital producer, and then the next time that you communicate, you cannot communicate with the same words. You gotta use a video instead of a graph, mail instead of a video. Like, you gotta reinvent yourself and use all types of
different colors.
Exactly, different colors, different. One thing on the education piece that I've seen is that people are not, I think, for delivering content, virtual platforms are actually better than in-person events. I think that 100%. If the goal is to educate someone, virtual is better, it tracks better, the content delivery is better, the on-demand, post-event is also better. I think what people are doing is that they're shifting the social piece to be in person, and virtual, social, it's not that good. It's much better to be in person with someone, drink with them, if you're on a resort or a retreat or something, just make these in-person events better. But for content and educations, I think virtual platforms are much better at this than in-person trainings, for example.
Okay. All right. So, Jonathan, do you have anything to add, based on what Saroosh and Pedro?
Yeah. Not to get called out on agreeing, but I have to agree on the comment around virtual platforms being a better mechanism for distributing content. As for some of the challenges that we see, I'd say probably the largest is just that the troubleshooting aspects of what takes place in a virtual event don't come as intuitively as what you experience in person. If you walk into a room for a breakout session and the lights are off, you know what you do. You hit the switch, you call maintenance, whatever is there. And there's just that learning curve that takes reps, takes laps to make it as intuitive on how to ensure everything goes smoothly. But I think there's people forget that everything doesn't go perfectly every time in person. Sometimes the projector doesn't work, whatever it might be. And sometimes there's a blame on technology when we just haven't experienced all of the opportunities yet.
Okay, so I think so from your point of view, Jonathan. So basically, you guys have this you basically lower the barrier of organizing a large scale of events, right? So as far as I understand, so my prior experience attending all those conventions like trade shows, right? So it's maybe 5,000 people, 10,000 people, maximum, right? But now also we have virtual events hundreds of thousands of people, online at the same time to become possible, right? So that significantly lower the barrier, of holding, organizing such a big events, right? So in that sense, so you basically do you think you guys it's kind of changing the ecosystem or the entire landscape of the event market? For organizers and event planners.
Yeah,
maybe it's become more consolidated, right? So basically before they're probably gonna hire contractors, handling all logistics and etc. So now they don't need that anymore. They don't need the person who's specialized in handling all those logistics anymore, right? So but it become more digitalized. Somebody maybe Angelica, he's sitting in Italy, Naples, directing the whole thing, right? So maybe on jobs that can be outsourced, elsewhere, across the country, right? So you guys, do you see that coming?
Well, I'd say the counter is that virtual events allow organizations to host events at a much higher frequency than they could ever host in-person events. And that's one thing that we're seeing. And as a result of that, there's more of a rationale for hiring full-time staff that's focused on producing those events.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So if Pedro and Saroosh doesn't really have anything to add, so I'm going to move to the next question.
I was just going to say that the jobs are not going away, because the thing is just the skills are shifting a little bit, but you still need people. Like if Angelica was not here, this event will not happen. That's the inside. She can be in Italy, operating everything from there. She doesn't have to travel. I think that's the only difference. But it's still the person needs to have the skill and be online and be able to deliver their work to run a successful online event.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Reskilling is really important. I think, as Pedro said, the jobs are there. I think the ecosystem was dented. It was hurt. The supply chain was hurt. But those jobs that were lost, they can definitely be picked up with some reskilling, some retooling, and the reallocation of time. Easier said than done, of course. But there's plenty of opportunity out there because the volume is increased. And the skill set to accomplish these events is definitely in demand.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So so virtual events and physical events, right? So you put it like an apple to apple comparison. You'll see that physical events is like you basically got stuck in the physical space, right? So people go to a conference, they have to be in the conference, right? So because people got stuck over there. And they gotta listen to whatever whatever the speakers gotta say, right? But virtual events, it's different, right? So virtual events is like I got bored for like 5 minutes and I just cut off and just get a cup of tea, right? So that sense, it's from metrics point of view, do you guys have a real number to support that virtual events actually is more effective than the traditional physical events? Pedro.
Okay, yeah, I can start. So what we see is on the metrics. So we have one thing called CU credit. So it's continuing education units. And that metric we use on the in-person events that we had and also virtually. And we can say that we have increased by 50% the precision on how many people are actually going through the training, and they get the notifications in real time, and they're able to know that they got the full credit instead of just like a partial assignment. So that has improved specifically for associations and professional organizations that are using that specific tool. For someone that's just using the platform for a webinar, I think webinars have been around forever. And if you don't innovate on them, or if you don't have a real reason, they're still going to be boring. But if you can create something that's required and you have breakout rooms and you think about the event, you really do plan for the event and you are creative, that can be much more than just a webinar. Yeah.
Okay. Saroosh?
Yeah, no, I think the just piggybacking on Pedro's point, I think the tracking, the trackability, and I think the the advent of matchmaking, gamification, all these things are prevalent in the virtual realm because they're possible technologically speaking, right? Previously, very, very cheesy and not practical. You could do an ice-breaking activity with 10 people in a space, but if you do an ice-breaking activity with 1,000 people, by the way, I've seen Anthony Robbins do that, and he does it successfully. But for the common events, totally almost impossible. But in the virtual realm, you can actually accomplish a scale, icebreaker event or activity through matchmaking, through other, gamification efforts. Tracking is a big part. Because we're talking digital markers, it's rather easy to track behavior, to track attendance, duration, and also churn, right? So without virtual, none of this would have been as powerful as it is now. And it's actually scary to think where it's going to go, right? Data privacy is a very important topic for me personally. But putting that to the side for a second, there's so much opportunity here to take advantage and provide better content and better services. And that's what virtual events make possible, right?
Yeah. What do you think, Jonathan?
Yeah. So, along the lines of data, one of the things that virtual events make much easier is following up immediately after collecting that data, as opposed to trying to aggregate sheets of paper and other information before being able to communicate with those prospects. And we obviously know how important it is to follow up immediately after those interactions. So that's a big piece of it. And then, if you look at the way that events are used by organizations, by brands, 22 to 25% of marketing budgets are spent on events. As we think about the future of marketing and the cookieless future, going back to the topic of data privacy, using events as a mechanism for permission-based marketing is just, it's so powerful, because in exchange for somebody having the opportunity to participate in your event, they're basically giving you their mind share, their attention, and the opportunity for you to market to them. And as we think about the work of events within digital marketing, it just makes it so much more human and interactive than just cookie-based ad sets.
Yeah. Yes. So, I think three of you guys also mentioned the data privacy issue, right? So, to me, I figure, this virtual events is kind of from a marketing point of view, it's not different from as a platform, right? So, all those sites are using cookies or device IDs or app trackers, right? So track what we do every day, right? That kind of data issues, there's recently, I think Apple releases a lot of limits about how you can track what your user is doing, right? So especially cross app tracking. But for virtual events, right? People come in, they give you all information, and does that gonna cause any issue in the future?
But there's a big difference between cross-platform tracking. I visit one website and then another website starts advertising me because I got entered into a demographic. Then me spending thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars producing an incredible event and inviting you to come participate in that event for free, and you giving me a small amount of information for that, which I'm keeping, I'm not sharing elsewhere. I think those are two very different mechanisms of advertising.
Right.
Okay.
I think, just to take your question, right, Stanley, based on what we saw, there's abuse, right? So Pedro, Jonathan, even, in what we do, is I agree. I mean, the clients that we have justifiably get access to their attendee data, right? Because they're providing a value. They're providing content for free, and even in some paid cases, it's justifiable. But there is abuse that's possible. I want to say Zoom, but my disclaimer is I'm not sure if it was Zoom. But early on, I think maybe a year ago or less than a year ago, there was something that came out about tracking attendee data or attendee behavior, and it created a big ruckus because, to Jonathan's point, if you're using that data with permission in the context of the event, everyone agrees that there's value there. Because if you're not doing it, that means the attendee didn't give you permission to do it. That's number one. I think everyone agrees that it's on the up and up, and that's fine. The other side is if you're using that same data for another purpose, right? That's where it gets extremely disgusting. It gets extremely dangerous. And I think that's what the accusation was. Again, I could be wrong, but that's what, we are the stewards for data. We are the stewards for ensuring that attendees that come on our platform are protected, and the organizations on our platform are behaving in a responsible way. So that brings with it, obviously, the natural responsibility for data stewardship. But I think the line is pretty clear: is if everyone has given permission for specific data, my gender, my location, my favorite color, then that's fine. But if you're using that data for other purposes outside of my understanding, that's not cool. And we myself, Jonathan, Pedro, we all are responsible. We all have to be responsible to maintain that line in the sand, right? Those are my 2 cents.
So let me ask you a question then. So there's been a lot of conversation recently, controversy for that matter, on the topic of event platforms cross-promoting other events. And especially in the case where those event organizers are paying substantial amounts of money to acquire those customers and bring them into that ecosystem. And then the platform is cross-promoting that same attendee base to other events that could be competing events. What's your take on that?
No, Jonathan, love that you asked.
It's a great question. This is a great question.
Yeah, no, it's an awesome question. I actually had this conversation several times, Jonathan. The platform you're talking about, I know which platform it is, and obviously we're against that, right? I think it creates such a unfair environment where you're hurting smaller players, and you're giving benefit to the larger players, and it's also duplicitous in some ways because it's pay to play, right? So you're giving attendees visibility and access to events that are not maybe necessarily organic, or events that would not be what they would normally come across. So I think it makes the playing field a little bit unfair. With that said, Jonathan, I think there is a way to do it ethically and properly, and it's a simple rule. It's a very simple rule. Is if the organizer is okay with other events being shown with their events, then great. If the event organizer is not okay with it, then do not do it. Leave the decision up to the event organizer, right? So,
and in exchange, if I offer my audience up to get cross marketed to, then I would anticipate that leads, potential attendees would be sent my direction as well.
Reciprocal, absolutely,
right.
Absolutely. So it's a simple thing. If it's fair, it's great. If it's not fair, it's not great. And we all have to stand up against tactics like that, because at the end of the day, it really corrupts the industry. No one experiences it now, but when the problem gets so big, then you're like, oh my God, I can't believe we allowed this to happen. And I take a personal responsibility. And based on Jonathan's question, I know he does as well. I'm sure, Pedro, you do as well. We all have to take personal responsibility for these types of behavioral tactics that really cause corruption in the industry. It shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention to you guys is I came across there's one company called Radius. It's a San Francisco-based company. So they are doing like a marketing data exchange, based on Salesforce. For example, so one company has this sales leads, right? So contact information about like one company's different people, and the other company got a list of other data. So they are on, if they're on consensus, they basically can exchange the data. With always all the consent from the user. It's in that company has been around for a few years. Is that do you think that's the kind of is that the same case?
I think it is the customer choice in the end to decide what they want to do with their data, and the company should respect that. It's the same thing like Apple. They go on their videos and they always communicate hey, if we are a private first company, that's what we do. We are not in the business of selling your data. And there are other companies that actually do that, like Facebook and Google. They actually make money out of ads, and that's how most of their revenue coming from. So I think the customer has to be able to select which platforms they want to use and understand that that's their business model, and you opt in with your money to select that's the play that I think should win, and that's the play that I want to win. And money in the end is your bet, is your opinion. Like you're saying, I want this company to succeed. You put money on them, you buy their products, and that's, I believe, what the free market it's all about, and that's why it's such an exciting space. Yeah.
Okay. No, Pedro, not yet. So here's a curveball. So Hopin is worth $7.7 billion now, and it has been doing a lot of acquisitions this year. And do you think acquisition is a good approach for growth in this arena? And what do you think? What's your comments on Hopin's strategy? Capital intensive, operation intensive, acquisition intensive.
I mean, that can be a model that can work. My take on this is more like I try to see companies as, what is a company worth and what is the competition worth. And you try to see if they're match. Like I've seen other companies in the same industry being around for 20 years and they're very important to the ecosystem and they're worth like $3 or $4 billion. So sometimes it's a little bit, hard to understand how a company can, justify their valuation at this point. But that could be like a new innovative way of, investing and that may be successful, but we don't know, the markets are going to decide in the end. One thing about, acquiring other companies is that I always think that the subset of features that you have is very important. Like if you add too many features, it becomes very complicated, but that's okay if you're deploying like the Olympics, right? At the same time, if you want to make something very, very simple, you must know the customer experience to be very simple, like not so many features, really focus on one segment and everything. So the thing is, if you're transitioning from one to the other, you're going to lose both customers from both sides. So you just need to be like really focused on, that's the model that I'm delivering this kind of business. And if I'm acquiring other companies, am I still going to be the same company or I'm shifting away from where I was? And I think that's dangerous when you're doing that without clear strategy towards the end.
Okay. So what are you saying, Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of another company. I guess talking about the valuation, though, I have so much conviction in the future of this entire industry and the impact that virtual events are going to make on that industry that I don't think the multiple is as crazy as some other people might claim. Because I think the value is there. And I think the customer base is going to be sticky and here to stay. And I think there's going to be a lot of expansion revenue. Okay. Specifically on the topic of acquisition as a mechanism. Well, I mean, they're just, they're a much younger company than the three of us. And what we've built over many years, that infrastructure to support what we're trying to accomplish, to catch up, I think acquisition is probably going to be necessary. That said, from a technology perspective, I can't imagine tackling that integration.
Man, integration is very hard for with acquisitions.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we only have 7 minutes left. I think we got a few questions from the audience. And hey, I'm gonna give this control to Garrett. Garrett, why don't you read out a few questions from the audience? I think we probably got time for one or two.
Yes, totally. That sounds great. And actually, you all just touched on Alfred's question. He asked about the strategy in terms of acquiring technology from other companies or building it yourself. So I think that one is well covered. We've got a great one here from Raisa. She says, I want to know what are the next big steps for virtual and hybrid event platforms. So I think just touching on sort of the future of hybrid events with virtual and the crossover there, if anyone has any thoughts.
Well, I think this actually goes back to the first question on the build versus buy conversation. As we are seeing the frequency of events increasing, the challenges that go into trying to build out both the in-person experience and the virtual experience, purely from a technology perspective, not even talking about hosting that in-person experience. But there is just, it is time consuming, frankly. It's a lot of work, and trying to just basically build two experiences is just another challenge that I think could be getting in the way of the opportunity that is there for that hybrid experience. I do think that technology is going to play a much larger role in purely in-person events going forward as well.
Awesome. That makes sense. Anyone else want to weigh in on that one? We can move on to the next one here. Another great question from Raisa. She's asking about the potential for audio only or something like a clubhouse for virtual events, and just your thoughts on that as a format. I know we were talking about video earlier, but just kind of this explosion of sort of audio only formats and how that plays in with virtual events.
You want to go, Jonathan?
Yeah,
one thing that I have is that you got to understand that for like audio events, they're just as, resource intensive as producing any kind of other event. So people think I'm just going to host something using my phone and everything is okay. Like, you still have to plan, you still have to allocate a producer, you still have to prepare the show. It still needs to be interactive. You got to have great content because, people will not listen to your show if it's just something that's, just because it's audio. It still needs to be engaging. And that's very, very expensive still from the resource point of view. Yeah.
I find, and this is a personal observation, but if I'm listening to a podcast or Clubhouse or something like that, and I pick up my phone, I start scrolling through my email or Instagram or whatever else it might be, my attention immediately drifts. And when you're only engaging your audience through one sensory mechanism, as opposed to visual and audio, I think it's easier for people's attention to drift and then engagement to drop.
Makes sense.
Yep. Yeah,
Great.
just piggybacking with those comments. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, go ahead, Saroosh.
No, I just want to piggyback on Jonathan and Pedro's comments. Very valid. Yeah.
Awesome. And I think that's the only question that we got in the chat. But and I think we're just about out of time here. But I just want to thank you all. Thank you, Stanley, Pedro, Saroosh, and Jonathan. This was a great discussion, and just everyone in the audience for joining. When you leave, there'll be a quick one-question survey to answer at the end. If you could please do that. And then up next in the business track, coming up in the next 2 minutes here, we've got two great sessions to choose from. We have Uncovering the Market Trends of Online Education and A Healthier Tomorrow, Access to Wellness from Anywhere. So both of those sessions coming up right after this. And then after that, we've got Open Networking at 3 Pacific, followed by Trivia at 4 Pacific.
Okay, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Stanley.
Thank you all.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Saroosh, Jonathan, Pedro.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you, Angelica. Thanks, Garrett. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Thanks to Garrett and Angelica.
Awesome, guys. Thank you.